In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make this really cute seagull. So here he is, and yeah, he can be done in plush yarn to make him bigger, and I'll show you the steps on how to make him and what we're going to need. So first of all, for the tutorial, we are obviously going to need a pair of scissors, a small amount of black yarn. You don't need much, so this is great for scrap busting. We're also going to need some yellow yarn and some white yarn. I'm also going to be relying on a stitch marker, a crochet hook, which I might actually change the size in a moment, but you will need a crochet hook, a needle threader and a needle. So to start, we are going to make our body. Oh, I did miss out as well. We will need some stuffing as well. So to start, we are going to make a magic ring, and in our magic ring, we are going to place 6 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Once we have got our 6 single crochets in our magic circle, I'm going to find our first stitch and I'm going to join together with a slip stitch. Once that's done, we can pull our circle in nice and snug, and then we will be left with a circle. I'm then going to bring up my yarn tail from the back, and I'm going to be working over it. So I'm going to go into my first stitch, and from here I'm going to put 2 double crochets into my magic ring. So once I've done my first single, I'm going to pop in my stitch marker so I know that I'm working to this stitch, and then from here I'm then going to put in another single crochet again into the same space, and then I'm going to do 2 single crochets in each of the stitches. So at the end of this round you will have 12 stitches. So there's 2 for my 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. Once we have our 12 single crochets, I'm just going to make sure my circle is nice and tight, and then we are going to be working our rounds from here. So in our next row, very simple, we are just going to do 12 single crochets. So I'm going to do my first one, and then I'm going to drop in my stitch marker. And then we'll go from there. Once we have done our 12 single crochets in that row, we are then going to be moving on to our next row. And in this row, we are going to be doing 2 double crochets in our first, sorry, 2 single crochets in our first stitch. And once we have done that, we're then going to go into the next stitch and we're going to put in 3 single crochets. 1, 2, and 3. We're going to go into the next stitch and we're going to put 2 single crochets into our next stitch. Then we're going to put 3 single crochets then we're going to do 2 single crochets into the next stitch, followed by 3 single crochets. At the end of this row, we will have 15 stitches. We're now going to go on and we're going to do 15 single crochets in this row. So we're going to have 7 rows of our single crochets, 15 stitches in each row. Okay, so there's our first row of single crochets. So once we have done that, we're then going to repeat this 6 further times. I'll do this off camera and I'll get back to you once I finish this. Once you have got to this point, we are then going to move on to our body. So the first thing that we are going to do, I'm going to have the head and neck which look like this, and I'm going to move on to starting to build up the body. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to put in a single crochet and then mark with a stitch marker. Oops. And then once I've got my single crochet in there, I'm going to go into my next stitch and put in another single crochet. I'm then going to go into the next stitch and I'm going to put 2 single crochets into that stitch, and then into the next stitch I'm going to put 2 single crochets, and I'm going to repeat this once more. So I'm going to have 3 sets of single crochets or doubles in the next 3 stitches. So in the 3 stitches you'll have the 6 stitches. So once we have got there, we are then going to put in 10 single crochets along the rest of our remaining stitches. Okay. Once we get to our next stitch, we're going to put in a single crochet, mark with a stitch marker. Once you have finished this row, we're going to start our next row, which is going to be a single crochet in the first stitch, followed by another single crochet. Then we're going to put 2 single crochets into the next stitch and repeat this 5 times so that we've got 6 lots of 2 stitches. So there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then we're going to put 10 single crochets into the remaining stitches of our round until we meet back at our stitch marker. Once we're back at the stitch marker, we are then going to move our stitch marker and we're going to put a decrease into our first stitch. And then we're going to mark that with a stitch marker. Pull up nice and tight to close that gap. Then we're going to put in 2 single crochets into the next stitches, followed by another decrease. Then we're going to move on to 2 single crochets. And then we'll put in another decrease. Followed by 2 single crochets. Oops. Then we're going to put in our next decrease. And 2 single crochets. And another decrease. Two more single crochets. And one final decrease. Oops. So once we have our shape of our seagull, we can then pull up a loop, insert our finger to know where the eyes are going to go, and we're just going to put a teeny weeny bit of stuffing into the head before we put in our eyes, just to shape the head a little. Insert some stuff in, put a teeny weeny bit more. And then once that's in, we are going to count down to row 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to put our eyes slightly above this line. So I'm just going to put my needle in there. I'm going to fold it so that I can find my center, which is here. And then my eyes are going to go approximately 4 stitches apart. So we want 1, 2 on this side. So I'm going to put my eye in about there. And I'm happy with that position. So this is a little tricky, so if you can find the eye back, and we're just going to pop the eye back on. Gotcha. There we go. So once the eye is in place, we're then going to count 4 stitches along. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to put our next eye in here. and again pop the back on. Once our eye backs are on and in place, we can continue to stuff our head. Like so. Just sort of shaping it as you go. We are then going to do a single crochet to join our round together. We are then going to put a stitch marker into that single crochet, and then we are going to continue to put decreases in that round. So in every single stitch we're going to do one single crochet followed by a decrease. So we go 1, and a decrease, followed by another one and a decrease, followed by another one and a decrease, followed by another one and a decrease, and one more and a final decrease. Okay. Once we're happy with that, we're then going to fill some more stuff inside. So make sure you put lots into the body just to pad the body out. Just holding the head in position if I can, just to get a good shape. Okay, now we're going to do 6 decreases around and continue to stuff if you need to. Once we have got to this point, I'm going to leave a long tail for sewing, and then I'm going to take this opportunity to stuff as much as I possibly can. Now that I am happy with my stuffing, I'm going to go into every stitch and close the gap, tightening round. Keep pushing your stuffing in there. Just making sure there are no gaps. Once you're secure and there are no gaps, bring your needle back through, and then we are going to just pull it tight and then snip off our yarn, and then we have our seagull's body. For the next part of the tutorial, I'm going to create the beak. So I will do this by creating a magic ring, and inside of the magic ring I'm going to put 3 single crochets. Once I've done that, I'm going to close my ring, go into my first stitch. I'm going to work over my tail, and I'm going to put in a single crochet, and I will mark with my stitch marker. Sorry, it's quite tricky to do with the plaster on. I keep sticking to the plaster. Once that's in, I will then go into the same stitch and put in another single crochet, go into the next stitch and put in a single crochet, and then into the final stitch a single crochet, giving me a count of 4 single crochets. I can now tighten the ring even more with my tail, just to give me a tighter, closer finish. So once I've done this, I can take out my stitch marker, and then I can go into my first stitch of this round, and I will put in a single crochet. Again, just working over my tail, and then I will mark this with the stitch marker. Then I'm going to go into the next stitch, and I will pop in 2 single crochets into this next stitch. And then once I have done this, I will then put in another single crochet into the next stitch. And then a final stitch in the next stitch, and then I will go into the first stitch and put in a single crochet. Once that's done, I'm then going to go round my round and put in single crochets in each of the stitches. So there now should be 5. So here's 1, then 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're then going to join with a slip and pull a tail through just long enough to sew. And I'm going to use my tail just to pull, and then once that's done, I'm just going to thread it through. The back, and then I can cut that off. And then once I have finished that, I can sew my beak into place onto my seagull. So for this, I'm just using a tapestry needle. Any needle will do if you can get your yarn through it, but I find these a bit better as they have a bigger, whatever this part is called. Is it a head? I don't know. So I'm just going to go ahead and just sew in my beak in between the eyes. And there we go, there's our beak attached to our seagull. And then I'm just going to feed my yarn through just anywhere just to close off, and then I can pull it really tight, cut my yarn and let go. And there we have our little beak. For the next part of our seagull, we will create a leg. This will be needed to be repeated because hopefully our seagull should have 2 legs. So first of all, I am going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the second chain from the hook, we are going to put in 2 single crochets. So there's 1 and there is 2. It wants to go. In the next chain from the hook, we will then put in 2 further single crochets. and then in the top we will then put in 2 single crochets again, and that will take us through to the other side. So now that we are on the other side of the chain, we are going to put in 1 single crochet into our first chain, and then we're going to follow that round and put in a single crochet into each one of the stitches, which should give us theoretically 6 stitches, as we did our 4, and then we've got our 2 from the other side or on the end. So there's 3, 4, 5 and 6. So once we've got our 6 single crochets in there, we're going to repeat that yet again. So we need 6 further single crochets. So there is 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, and our final one, 6. So now once we have our 6, we're then going to do a decrease. So we'll put 2 single crochets together, and then once we've done our decrease, we'll do 2 single crochets. So 1 and 2, and then slip into that final stitch to join. We should now have 4 single crochets to complete for this row. So 1, 2, 3, whoops, and 4. And then once we have done that, we'll repeat that again. So 4 further single crochets will create our little foot. So 1, 2, 3, and final one, 4. And then we can draw up a loop and we will have our foot, which we can then stitch into place at the bottom of our seagull. This can be repeated, and then we will have our 2 feet. We're now going to create our wing. So for this, you'll need 2 colours of yarn. You will need a grey, and you will also need a black. So again, we'll make 2 of these. So first of all, we are going to make a magic ring, and in our magic ring we will place 4 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. Once we've done that, we're going to close our ring, and join, create a slip stitch. So once we have done that, we can then put a stitch marker into that first stitch. Once we have created that, we can then put 2 single crochets into our first so 1, 2. So once we have done that, we can then go into our next stitch and put in a single crochet, and then a single crochet into our next stitch. So once we have got there, we can take out our stitch marker, close our ring as tightly as we can, go into our next stitch, our first stitch, and put in 2 single crochets, marking with the stitch marker. So we're putting our first, pop in our stitch marker before popping in our second, and then we will put in a single crochet into the other 4 stitches, sorry, 5 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And at this point we can take out our stitch marker, and then we're going to go into our first stitch and put in a single crochet, and then we will mark with our stitch marker once again. and then we're going to put in six single crochets into this row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Then we can take out our stitch marker, and then we're going to use a grey colour or fasten off, and then we're going to feed our grey colour through. So draw up a loop, a single crochet, and then once we have done that, we are then going to put 2 single crochets into the next stitch, a single crochet into the next stitch, a single crochet into the next stitch, and we'll repeat that until we make it the entire way round. And one more. And then once we have done that, I am then going to fold my wing flat, and I'm going to pop in a stitch here, and this will be the start of this row. I'm going to turn my work, and I'm going to put in another single crochet, and I'm going to put in 2 double crochets into this next stitch, and then a single crochet into the next 2 stitches. Then I'm going to do a single crochet or a chain, sorry, and then I'm going to put in 4 single crochets into the next stitches. Final one, 4, 4. And then I will chain 1, and then I'm going to make a decrease, after the first single crochet, and then 1 further single crochet, and I'll draw up a loop, and that will create my wing. Leave enough yarn so that you can stitch on, and then just cut off your ends. You can weave them in, and then you should have your wing. You can then sew your wing into place onto your seagull around about here, and then once that's done, you will have a seagull that looks like this. So I hope you have enjoyed making the seagull, and I'd love to see your seagulls. If you want to post them in the comments below or send a link of where I can see your seagull. I hope you've enjoyed and thank you for watching. Bye bye.